The City Council has been in closed session on the personnel matters listed on the agenda. That matter was not concluded yet, and my understanding is we will go back into closed session at the conclusion of the rest of the agenda, and any report that may be made would come after that.
So stick around for about an hour after we terminate the meeting, and you'll get an exciting report of a closed session. Everybody's shaking their head no. Okay. Next is invocation and pledge of allegiance, which will be not as it is on the agenda, but by Councilman Daly. Please stand. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Okay, we have 3 requests for speaking, and they're all non-agendized comments. So I'll start with the first one on the stack, Dick Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I wanted to make a little bit of a comment about one of the questions popped up last council meeting. Mr. Lamar said that he'd seen quite a bit of activity with coyotes. One thing this town needs to be aware of, we are losing more habitat for animals. I know going back quite a while ago, used to live over on Hinckley Street, and we had the coyotes coming through there. We had open field out in front. And what they would do, they come down through Santa Mateo Canyon, and where Stater Brothers used to be, where Clark's is, they knew that they would throw the food out the back, and they knew where it was. So they'd come down and have their meal and go back. Well, now that trash is covered up and they can't get to it, you have to find other sources. And with that, they used to be over in the groves on Mission and then all the way on up Citrus. Well, those are gone. The ground squirrels are gone. And a lot of their food is gone. They used to eat oranges. And I could see and tell that they had done this. Well, those are going somewhere else. And one thing that I've been aware of, a lot of people leave their cats out, say, go out, tend your own business, or their dogs will be left out. And they know where these little things are. I saw one night. Little cat was hard of hearing, and it picked it up and it was gone. It had its dinner. But, you know, the one that owned the cat saw it go, but she couldn't get it. But there, as you cut the food out, they are ultimately going to be looking for food. And I've seen them walk through our complex at night, and I'll talk to them, and they'll stop and they'll look, and they don't feel too threatened. I've got skunks that are around me at my place, possums, raccoons. But as you take more and more of this food away, they have to have it some way, or they're going to find it. So most of them would come out of the hills. As I say, go down San Mateo Canyon, the coyotes. But this is something that, if we can find a path for them, or a place to put them back there in the hills where they don't come out, I think it would be nice. How we're going to do that, I don't know. But just the people around town usually aren't out and don't see this stuff. And when they do, they don't think about why are they in here? What's going on? And as I say, there's a lot of things. I've never seen a horned toad in close to 35, 40 years around here. There used to be some, but we're losing a lot of things because we're encroaching in their areas. You go down and listen to people complain about the animals coming out of the hills down in the city. No, that was their area. You invaded their area, and you expect them to disappear. That's not the case. So it's something I think the citizens need to be aware of to protect not only their animals, but to say, don't threaten them because you don't want them coming at you. And I think they get along with society. I've seen them up here in Barton. They know when to cross. The coyotes do. They're smart enough to say, okay, I understand a car's coming. I don't hear it. Now I'll cross. So they're pretty smart animals. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we've probably done our share with the South Hills Preserve, and I think that helps them out a lot. But they tend to like to have their dessert with our pets. Okay, the next speaker on the list is Bill Arnold with an update for the chamber.
Good evening, esteemed council members. Happy holidays, if we get into that. Anyway, just as we enter the holidays, it sort of wraps up the year for the chamber here through December. And as we do that, one of our updates is that I will be timing out as our chamber president and turning that over to Victor Miller, who will be the president going into next year for a while. And I just want to, as I'll still serve on the board in any other way I can, but I just want to thank the chamber for their support over the past 3 years particularly, as we have sort of risen to what is becoming a model chamber for small town chambers. And still a lot to do, but with your support every year, not just financially, but also with your presence and participation, I believe has meant a lot to our city. Also, to JARB and city staff have been extremely helpful to us in our office, not just with the space that they allow us to use, but also just in things that we need. Whatever it is, they've never said no yet. So I just appreciate what they have done, and that has been critical to our chamber, not just surviving, but in growing and getting back on its feet again here in the last few years. Next event, which I hope you can come to, is December 4. If you put that in your calendar, that's the annual now Christmas tree lighting. So we're going to help Barbara. We'll work together to put together a fun Christmas tree lighting right out here on our Charlie Brown tree, December 4th. And that's the same night as market night. So I'm assuming that you got here early and got supper before you went into closed session. But please come and try market night out a little bit when you can. Tuesday nights right here at City Hall. And maybe one of the things we can do next year is find more parking here in City Council. I don't know. Good luck. You could be elected for life if you do that. Anyway, that's our little update on the chamber. Look forward to continuing to serve the city in any way I can. And again, thank you for all you have done for our chamber here in the last few years.
There's some questions. Come back. My question is Victor Miller committed to bringing back the parade?
I have no comment on that. Okay. No, We did try a year ago on the parade, and we discovered that we were not capable of doing that with our current financial structure and staffing. I wouldn't say never. One of the things we looked at is a Christmas, doing it with the Christmas tree lighting, doing a shortened parade, maybe down Barton somehow that ended up here at the city instead of the other way. The Academy no longer does the fair in the same way that it used to when all our kids were in school. They've taken a different look at how they do the fair, so it's not the same food and games like it used to be. So yeah, something that might come down, end up here, end up with the Christmas tree lighting, attracting a little more community involvement isn't off the table. It just is sitting there for now.
I just feel sorry for our Model A Ford fire engine that just never gets to
Well, maybe we can get Santa.
Never gets to stretch its
We can get
legs.
Santa on it, maybe. That'd be a good idea. Yeah, Santa was Santa on that one last year? Okay.
Okay, a couple of questions to my left.
Thanks for all your hard work on this. I know you didn't do it for the money. Well, maybe you did do it for the money.
I'm
You're a
waiting for that
wealthy man.
check.
How many members do we have in the Chamber of Commerce right now?
Well, Karen, as you know, Karen has been our operations manager here for the past, about 2.5 years at least, going on 3, and has really taken over all the things that really weren't happening and putting those in place. And I was going to say around 150, a little short of 150 then.
And has that, I assume that's been growing over the recent
Yeah,
years?
we're adding a few every month. And that's some of the things we have looked at our chamber. A lot of times we all think in terms of growth, get bigger. And we've talked about what's the right size for a chamber in our situation. Not necessarily to have 500 members.
Sure.
But what is the right size and what kind of members, what's our function? So we're a little unique, as you know, in the city of Loma Linda. So we've tried to react in a way that it doesn't necessarily grow for the sake of growth, but has some sort of purpose in that growth so that the members that come on, we can serve them and they contribute to the city in some way and to the chamber. So probably could have grown a little faster, but we've tried to grow with that mindset or philosophy, and it seems to be working. We'll see how we do going forward.
Well, from our perspective, of course, how robust the Chamber of Commerce is some evidence of how good the business community in our city is.
Yeah.
And so that's the purpose of my question. So I hope that we continue to grow that, because it means we have entrepreneurs that are engaged and want to help the city grow. So I appreciate the hard work.
It's a
and
good
effort
source
you
of
put in.
revenue for us,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
And, with the uniqueness of our community with the hospitals that are here, it makes some of that business growth interesting and challenging. But at the same time, we're trying to bring about some sort of marriage there.
Sure.
As best we can.
When you say it makes it interesting, fill in the blanks a little for me. I'm not sure.
Well,
what you're saying.
I don't know. You've got a one industry town, so to speak,
Healthcare.
and bringing other businesses into town are competing with that one big business, at least in some degree, whether that's in philosophy and makeup or in direct competition. And so sometimes that can be a little bit daunting for them to come in. So that and some other factors that make it difficult is high cost of lease here in Loma Linda for small businesses coming in. Has made it a little difficult. I wish there was a way we could do that, but that's all based on private ownership. So there's but some of those things have made it somewhat difficult. And how can we help businesses tap into the employment pool
Right.
that is here, whether it's coming or going, even if it's transit? How can we help those businesses tap into that in
Well,
some
not
way?
only the employment pool, but the potential customer
Right,
pool.
exactly.
Right.
So That's some of our challenges as we
So
move
what
forward.
are the hurdles that we should be aware of that are possibly preventing businesses from coming in here?
Well, a couple of quick things are, obviously there's a limited amount of land and space for that to happen. There is, again, the high cost of lease that a lot of small businesses run into. We're finding that many of the places would rather not lease than negotiate a price or do that. And there's been a few occasions where the drive-through rule has stopped a few. We had a Dunkin' Donuts a little while back that was very interested in coming here but couldn't find a place to do that and didn't want to do it without a drive-through. But some of
What was
those.
the hang-up with that? Why can't we have a drive-through in Dunkin' Donuts?
That's
Oh,
yeah. We have learned our
who
lesson.
voted for that? I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember.
It could,
Okay.
so that was off the table. And the one place they could find was not in a location they felt like was doable. So, I mean, that's just an example, but those are just some of the things that, are barriers.
So do most of your members find Loma Linda to be a hospitable community for their business?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't heard a lot of complaints that it's been difficult as far as working. I think they found the city easy to work with and trying to work through their part of permitting and stuff, but it's been some of the other things that are out of our control
Yeah.
that have made it difficult.
But what's out of your control is it in our control?
Well, I don't think so unless you can mandate a rent ceiling or a lease ceiling. That would be one of the big ones, and make more land, which, those are things we're kind of restricted. So a lot
the
of
cost
our
of setting up a business here is one hurdle.
in town is tough. A lot of our membership is in surrounding communities, but they
Okay.
come here for a lot of their business.
Just remember, we have a whole big area that's being developed. That's going to be important both to the chamber and to the city. So we're looking forward.
Let's talk
and
about
maybe-
Area D down here.
Phil, that might be a good point. If there was a way, as we do develop what we have, is there a way to think about how can we incorporate businesses or some businesses in there in a way that makes it feasible and possible for small businesses to do that? Not, big business is great and all, and we all go to Walmart and all because we save dollars, but if we can encourage some of the smaller businesses and make it workable for them, that would boost not only our economy and tax base, but also, our customer base and our growth.
So after your tenure as the Chamber of Commerce chair, what do you wish that we understood or know that you're not sure that we do?
Well, like I said, you have been very involved. I think you understand as much as we share. And if there's something you don't, it may be on our part that we haven't shared enough. Again, I think the things that are helpful to our chamber is continued financial support, which is unusual for a lot of cities. But also, again, your attendance at the things you can come to, like the Christmas tree lighting or swinging by the fair when you can on the way home, stuff like that. I think that says a lot to our chamber. Those are big things for us. And especially when our members see our city council's support, that keeps them engaged and involved. So those are big things that you do for us, and if you continue those, I can see the chamber continuing to grow.
One thing, I know Ron was asking a lot of questions, but I'll maybe give a little bit back that I'm sure you guys already think about this, but encourage your members to lobby. Because, we get a lot of people that come through here that lobby for various things, and whether it be a health-related issue or a growth issue, there are a lot of people in the community that are very vocal about, and that's good. That's really good about our city. But I often feel like our business community, they have desires, wants, and needs also, and they're just as much members of our city. And even though maybe some of them don't live here, they own and operate businesses in our city which help us run this town. And they have just as much right and just as much access to all of us as anybody else. And I would encourage, I know you guys know this already, but
No, but
share it with them. Tell them to talk to us and come to meetings and voice their opinion and give opinions, because I know there was a debatable topic that we just dealt with a couple of weeks or months ago, and there was some pretty strong feelings from the business community and the chamber on that. And, some of us knew that from directly talking, but, they got to get involved too. So we would love to see them.
that's a good suggestion. Probably something we could do a better job of informing of our membership is, here are things that, if these are things known by the council, then they can act on it. If they don't know about it, if they're not brought to their attention, they don't do it. And one of our most popular breakfasts is usually when we have a city presentation between Mayor Rigsby or Jarb, when they talk about what's happening with the city, what are some of the things they're doing. That attracts a lot of businesses to come hear that and ask questions. So, yeah, we need to catch that and funnel them. Yeah, it's good, very good. Thank you.
And just final, I was just going to say, Bill, thank you very much for all that you've done. We really appreciate
Thank you.
Your leadership and you being a big part of this. So thanks.
We've got some great people, and it's been a great team effort.
The main reason I come to the tree lighting ceremony is the inspirational speech that the mayor makes out there every year. So
It was very good in the hot chocolate.
I'm looking for a stand-in this year, would you?
I want to reflect what's already been said about appreciating your leadership. I know this is extra effort, and we really do appreciate it. And your sister's one of my favorite people in the world, so you can let her know
Okay,
that I gave her
Sure.
a shout out in city council.
You bet, you bet. Well, we have, for this year's Christmas tree lighting, we have secured the services of a very desirable Santa, so that it'll be as good as ever. He's growing his beard,
I've
getting
got to
ready
be there
right
for
now.
sure.
So
Okay.
don't miss that.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thanks
Okay,
again.
Thanks, Bill.
2:57, 58, 59. 3 minutes. Your time is
My
up.
time is up. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dennis Green, wants to tell us about the South Hills Preserve off-roading issues. Welcome back.
Why, thank you. Evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mayor, council members. I guess you know who I am now. I didn't know about the coyote problem until I got here today. Kind of ties into what I'm saying. You guys are letting people destroy that habitat out there, and that's driving the coyotes out probably. I see lots of destruction out there. I see kind of nothing from the city of Loma Linda as far as preserving the preserve. I know you can't stop motorcycles, but I've been seeing a lot of four-wheel vehicles. Today I actually saw somebody out there dumping something, some kind of liquid. I'm going to assume that it was toxic and illegal. This is because they have unlimited access to go out into the preserve. On the north side of the preserve, there's gates, there's barricades, there's signs. On the south side and down by where I live, there's nothing. So the people that pay taxes, they can't access it other than legally by walking and riding their dirt bikes. Their mountain bikes. People on the south side who don't pay taxes, they can do whatever they want because you folks don't limit them. Because of the four-wheel drive vehicles, that allows them to bring in equipment. During the summer, I've seen motorcycle jumps built, some of them as tall as 50 feet. This is on your property. This is a property that you do not police or maintain. Because of this lack of enforcement, the people that live around there, the private property, the people that drive out there, cross and destroy, damage our property to get to your property. I'm just here today.
Can you be more specific? Where are we talking about?
South Hills Preserves.
What's that?
The South Hill Preserve.
Are you talking about Scotch Lane?
Well, I live on Scotch Lane. That is one of the access points that people use to get into the South Hills Preserve. But I'm talking about the preserve itself. I know there's rules against motorized vehicles out there, and there is zero enforcement. I called a while back about motorcycle jumps. I did get a call back on that. Somebody called and said they drove around, couldn't find it. I told them that they needed to maybe walk a little bit, and I was informed that we don't hike. The city of Loma Linda, when I say we.
That was police?
Pardon me?
Was that police you talked to?
No, it was somebody from the city of Loma Linda.
Okay.
The police have actually been fairly good. When they cross my property, they're there for a minute or less. So by the time I call any kind of enforcement, they're long gone. So it doesn't do me any good. But you guys have a gym out there. It's beautiful, it's undeveloped, it's spectacular, and you're letting it be destroyed. The motorcycle riders, they all think they're Lewis and Clark, and they just make new trails and tear up the hills. Every day I see more and more destruction out there, and less of why I go out there and deal, and why other people walk out there that I see walking out there. So tonight I'm just here to remind you, there's still a problem. I still haven't seen any kind of enforcement or something to do. And I'd just like to see something done.
Can we get response from the staff on what we can and can't do?
I can work with the sheriff department on the enforcement part and what we can do. So.
During the summer, when it's hot, most of the motorcycle riders seem to be fair weather riders. So when it's hot, nobody goes out. But as soon as it cools off, like now, and with the rain coming, it's going to be massive number of people out there. This is the time that they all go out there. And somehow, something we can do about it would be really nice.
I guess my question is, we've heard this same testimony multiple times. Have we made effort to control it?
Yes, we put a couple of, it's big. There's a lot of, some of the people where the access is of City of Colton or the County of Riverside. So we're not patrol, we're not gated or fencing the whole South Hill. That's why the one that we have control over, which is on the north side of the hill, which is by the Mountain View trailhead, but not the back.
If we did patrol it, what would the penalty be? What rules are we enforcing? What
It's a
laws?
City ordinance. City ordinance, right?
I'm not sure what they are. I have talked to people who said that they've had their vehicles impounded at one point in time.
There's a city ordinance for motorized vehicles back in there, which in a sense is a misdemeanor. So here's the problem, though, and I've said this for probably the 8 years that I've been on council. It's a money issue, and I'll tell you why. Because the Sheriff's Department is not equipped in routine, regular patrol to go back into those hills and chase anybody back there. It just cannot happen. There's actually only a couple of stations in the entire Sheriff's Department that have off-road type motorcycles that have people that are trained to do that. One of them I happened to be in charge of for many years when I was at Ranch Cucamonga. And we could farm out stations like that, but we would have to pay them overtime. We can't just call and bring in Rancho people and Rancho motorcycles. So if the city manager is willing, and if it was the flavor of the council to establish some overtime money, they could reach out, they could pay those motorcycle trained enforcement deputies to go out and spend a couple of hours out there in the hills. But you're going to get enforcement, which means we're going to catch Loma Linda residents also. So we're going to, I mean, you don't go out there just to go out there. You go out there to cite people, take their vehicles away if they're illegal or whatever. So it's, you know, I've also had people that have approached me and told me that most of the people that go out there are Loma Linda residents and they're good people and why do we care? I am concerned that we are causing, or that people are causing damage to the watershed and other things out there. I'm concerned about the fire danger. I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy, but I've suggested this a bunch of times, and I honestly think that's going to be the only alternative.
Well, I'm just looking at maybe controlling access. I mean, when you go
That
up,
I don't think you can do. I think people find ways, I mean, as much as we try, people find a ways around the barricades here.
Right.
Right here in town. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's not hard to ride a
but
motorcycle around.
you're always going to have somebody, but a little effort will slow it down. You know, I'm just asking for a little something.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's an all or nothing thing. Either we go out there and we make it clear and we put some enforcement out there and get serious about it, or there's not much we can say about it, I don't think, because I don't know how you're going to stop it.
But it's being damaged, and you got
I
the
don't know.
coyote problem.
Matt, what do you guys think?
No, I agree with you. I mean, obviously we respond, but we are not typically equipped to address that issue without off-road motorcycles that we could deploy. So it's, you know, like Mr. Green said, we'll respond, but by the time we get there, they're often gone, and then you know, in our SUV, we're not capable of chasing them up into the hills, and they run away. So,
quick question is, I'm over here, so I know it's our audio doesn't indicate where it's coming from. Just if he happens to call the police, how challenging is it for your folks to actually get the helicopter, just at least run by and just at least give the people notice of the fact that someone is watching them? And you know, I know that sometimes the helicopters will actually have a megaphone saying, "Hey, you're trespassing. You will be arrested," and something to that effect. Is that even a possible scenario?
It's possible. Obviously, our helicopters are in great demand, and they spend a tremendous amount of time overhead of pursuits and things like that, which obviously would be the priority. So, like with all things, that would probably be something that would be low on the priority and kind of few and far between that they would have the time to do something like that. But you know, it's something that we could try.
If we designated some money, they could put overtime out there on the weekends for motorcycle OHV trained. To ride a motorcycle as a peace officer is a very hard, dangerous course you have to pass. I went through it and almost died. I'm not an off-road motorcycle rider, and it was horrible, but I made it through it. But there are very few people in the organization that are actually trained and certified that can ride off-road motorcycles, and I mean they would have, and they don't have the equipment at their station. So if we threw some money at it, they could set up some overtime, and they get people from other stations to come and do that.
I have a question. When you said misdemeanor, is that mean that after they get caught, what happened to them?
They'd probably get cited, but they potentially could get arrested because all municipal codes are misdemeanors.
They can come out and ride again.
Sure, but maybe you take their motorcycle because it's illegal, it's modified, it's not for whatever reason. I mean, the reality is you have to get serious. You can't just go out there and ask people, please don't do this again, right? It's like your kids. How many times do you give them a warning before you do something, right? I mean, seriously, right? That's what it ends up being. So, I mean, we can play this game, and I'm not trying to be facetious at all, sir, because I've seen you every year consistently for a number of years, right. And I understand it's frustrating, and I would love to be able to solve the problem. But whatever we're doing right now isn't working. That's
well, whatever. I don't see anything being done is my issue.
Whatever we're not doing is not working.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for something, you know, like a couple signs, a barricade here or there, and slow it down, let people know.
It's a good thing we've made drugs illegal in California, because thank God nobody does those.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just looking, one side is fortified, and the other side has nothing. So if you could take a little bit of the fortified and put it on the other side, and I mean, I've talked to people out there, and they go, nobody owns this land. We can do whatever we want to do out there. They need to be informed and say it's illegal. Put a sign up there. Put a couple of rocks across the main roads that go in there, and say.
One of the things that concerns me about this, and you're touching a little bit of nerve with me right now, and that is that, you know, we really promote our hills as a health and wellness kind of locale, right? And so there are so many people that are up there hiking, jogging, mountain biking, and I am concerned about motorized vehicle that's sharing that same space, right? What if, I'm out there hiking with my family and some dirt bike comes around a corner and, you know what I mean? Like, I obviously we have rules for a reason, and I agree with you. We can't be there all the time, but my thought is I think we need to do something.
Yes, that's my thought too.
Okay.
We did. We put some rocks down. We went out to your house.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago, and it was one boulder and one sign. That's, with all my visits here, that's what I've achieved so far, is one boulder and one sign.
We put a couple boulders, right, and they went around it.
So
okay,
more
we'll put
boulders,
more.
more boulders and more signs.
Well, sign, by a couple accesses by where I live, I've put up a couple of no trespassing signs, and it's actually slowed it down a little bit. But they're coming in from other places that I don't have any control over. Where you guys have control, you never know. It could be scare them off and slow them down. But if somebody went out there, or if you, the council members, went out and saw the destruction that I saw, you would be sad. You would the next day try to figure something out. Nobody's ever came out. I've never seen any. Nobody's ever called me and said, "Show me what's happening out there."
Maybe we should go on a junket or something.
The hill, it's being destroyed. It's supposed to be a preserve. I mean, if it was just nothing, I wouldn't care. But it's supposed to be a preserve. It's supposed to be a place where wild animals and people can talk. I saw deer out there the other day. First time I seen deer.
I asked a couple of years ago, if somebody's out there and they break their neck, are we liable for that? I don't know.
I was told that the city is not liable. That was when I was.
I've been told that too.
Yeah, but it's the destruction more than anything else. It's just horrible, and it's uncontrolled.
Some of us do hike those south hills, and so I confess I'm not entirely clear on what destruction you're talking about, but this last spring, Councilman Duper and I were both running for re-election, and we walked the streets of Loma Linda seeking votes, and I can tell you that there were a number of people. I didn't hear so much about destruction, but I heard safety concerns. I walked my dogs back there, and then a motorcycle rounds the corner on a dirt path about 30 miles an hour and almost hits me and my dogs. I heard those kinds of stories. I haven't heard so much about the destruction. So that's, again, why if you can be more specific, not right now, but if you can get to the city where the destruction's occurring, because I can't say that I've seen it. And I know there are motorcycles out there. Candidly, I know some of the people that do that. They're not asking my permission, but I know they do it. And so it is a conundrum. And I respect your concern and your observations, but obviously it's not an easy fix. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't attempt it.
Right. Just to clarify a little bit, there's no boundary, but to me there's like the north side of the preserve and then there's the south side. The people that usually go hiking from Loma Linda, they're up in the north side. There's some nice trails, and there's not that much. Well, I don't go there very often, so I don't know how much motorcycle activity there is.
So you're talking about Scotch Lane?
I'm talking about the very southwestern corner of the preserve.
Okay.
Kind of where Prado Lane comes off of it,
yeah.
and Crystal Ridge accesses. Right in that area, I don't see too many people walking and hiking because you got to get over a big hill to get over there from this side of that.
Okay.
So people walking there, but once you get over that hill, it's free for all. There's like I say the other day, somebody built a 50-foot jump. Literally had shovels and rakes and hose and water, and they brought in a truck and built a 50-foot motorcycle jump.
Okay.
And again, I don't know what kind of liability you have, but that's pushing it right on the edge as far as somebody getting hurt.
So, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any recommended solutions to this, but I do think we need to have somebody or some group that looks into it, because that's a conundrum for me.
We've been doing winking and nodding at the city manager, so, yeah. Thank you.
I'll tell you what, you use email?
I have an email.
Can you find my email address and
Yes,
email me?
without a problem. I just emailed a picture of the guy dumping toxic
Do
stuff out.
me a
to you.
favor, email me directly.
I
and
will.
I'm going to come up with a proposal, and I've got a couple of ideas, and I'll talk to the sheriff's department about it, see what their thoughts are, and we'll come up with a dollar figure and present it.
Excellent. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And your 3 minutes are up. Okay, now we'll get to the actual agenda, assuming there's no one else who has a unscheduled comment. Okay, we'll go to our consent calendar.
I'd like to pull 5B.
Okay, what's your question?
It's not a question. I'd like to ask, I've had a flurry of phone calls from people regarding shutdowns on the on Mountain View going north in the morning, and the problems with people exiting the Mountain View eastbound exit and blocking, semis blocking and so forth. And so I've talked with the city manager about it, and in the hope that some of those people may be watching tonight, can you share publicly what you shared with me earlier?
Yes, what this project will do is we're actually going to widen the both the eastbound and the westbound off-ramp to add additional lane to both locations, so that for the people that get off on the eastbound off-ramp, we'll have a right turn movement, free right turn movement that goes turn right going south into Loma Linda. For the westbound off-ramp, we'll have a right turn movement for the truck traffic that wanted to go north. They can turn north and then leave room, or people that want to turn left into Loma Linda. So that's the whole idea.
And the
of widening
timetable on
off-ramp.
that is?
It's not going to start until the first order of work will be order the traffic signal pole, which is going to take many months, but that will be the first order of work. The actual work itself, it shouldn't take very long, probably about 2 or 3 months.
And when do we project that'll be, this issue will be resolved?
I was hoping by April, because of, again, signal.
Okay.
So how does this play into the whole redesign of that intersection anyway that's coming at some point? Is this just kind of like a stopgap?
This is the interim solution.
Or does this play into part of the design?
The fix,
yes.
the fix that is planned is beyond the funding horizon for the current Measure I. So Measure I is already committed with other projects, so this is a lower priority. His partial fix lowers our priority in the next round of funding, the next Measure I.
Oh,
So this actually makes it less likely that it will achieve its definitive fix. But it's worth it for us because it's such a disaster right now.
And it's quicker.
We're better off with a quick and dirty partial fix than sitting around for 30 years and waiting for a definitive fix.
And Caltrans willing to pay us to do this project, so Caltrans pay us $1 million.
Yeah, what we're discovering is you step up and say you're going to spend your own money, and other people come along and throw money at it. So we got it mostly defrayed by Caltrans.
Then the other issue that, again, I've had more phone calls than I really expected is Southern California Edison, without notice, narrowing northbound Mountain View in the morning from 2 lanes to 1 lane. And every time that happens, I'm not sure why everybody calls me, but they do. Yeah, they call you too. Okay, I'm not the only one getting phone calls. Yeah. And so if you can describe the new agreement we have with Edison.
Yes, so what we did is we went out there and talked to the superintendent and the Edison staff to make sure that they do not start closing the traffic until after 9 o'clock in the morning, so.
The other morning when I got stuck in it, they parked their big trucks in a way that it set off the sensors so none of the lights would cycle. So they not only narrowed it down to one, that's when I called you, but the way their trucks were sitting on the street, all the lights were deadlocked, so nothing was moving northbound.
That's probably the morning I got all my phone calls.
And probably was.
And then some of these people turned, to avoid all the mess, they turned right on Redlands Boulevard, only to get narrowed down to 1 lane on Redlands Boulevard going east. and then they got off on New Jersey, and that New Jersey's closed. So, I mean, I had some really irate people.
Sounds like a classic bureaucracy.
Yeah, and I referred all of them to the mayor. I said, he's the guy that can handle
I think
all
they
of
call
this.
you because of the letter behind your name. They think you're an activist.
What? Could be. More power to me.
There's a positive side to it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so do you endorse the motion and second for the consent calendar? Okay. Any other comments on the consent calendar? We have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That is approved unanimously. Next, we have new business item 10, water and sewer rate study draft report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every 5 years, the city do the water and sewer rate study to make sure that we are current with our rate. And this year, again, we have Clayton Tuckfield with Tuckfield and Associate, who also did the study 5 years ago to do a presentation for us. Clayton.
I just want to make sure a new water board member doesn't have to recuse himself from participation in the discussion.
Well, good evening. I'm pleased to be able to provide this water and wastewater rate study to the members of City Council, staff, and public. These studies are always challenging to do because there's a lot of detail that goes into these studies, so I'll try to be concise, but I'm sure you'll have questions on the details. But I'm very much thankful that for Jarb and the rest of the City Council for allowing me to the opportunity to produce this study again for the city. There are several things I'd like to discuss this evening. I'd like to discuss the key assumptions of the study. We'll then talk about reserve policy goals that we've established for the study, including the current cash reserves the city has for the operating capital funds of the water and wastewater enterprises. We'll talk about the financial plans, the capital improvement plans going forward the city wants to construct for each of the enterprises. We'll then discuss a little bit about the Prop 218 process and how we designed rates that comply with that. We'll then talk about the rate structures, the rates themselves, and I'll present some bills and how you compare to other surrounding cities to City of Loma Linda. And then we'll talk about next steps. So some of the key assumptions we used working with staff, we're going to assume there'll be about 100 new single-family and multifamily units or accounts being added annually, and that's about a 1.5% growth rate. The city has permits pulled and they can justify that kind of a growth, so we've incorporated that into the study going forward. There are a certain number of inflation factors we've applied to the city's expenses for the water and wastewater system, and I've listed those here. The city is currently earning about 2% on its cash reserves, and that's been included into the study. And we're proposing that the first increase would be this March 1st, 2019, and then each subsequent increase would occur on January 1st for the study period. Now, we talked about reserve policy. These are the goals that the city would like to have. We have an operating fund reserve. We want to maintain a balance in there of 180 days of operation and maintenance expense. For the capital fund, we want to keep 50% of annual depreciation expense as a reserve in that fund. The city has various expansion funds. This is for the collection of capacity charges. Now, those money that you collect stays in that fund and are not to be used for any other purpose, like paying for operating expenses, but they can only be used for specific projects. So that will go towards capital program spending, which I'll discuss when we get to that slide. And then we'd like to keep an amount for an emergency reserve. We're going to set that equal to about 3% of the fixed asset value of the water and the sewer enterprise systems. So down below, you can see the cash that we currently have on hand. For the operating fund, this is the reserve balance as of now. Oh, I'm sorry, as of June 30th, 2018. So we have a 1.2 million operating, about 700,000 in capital. 4.5 million is currently in the expansion fund reserve, and then an emergency reserve of 950. So while it looks like we've met our reserve target, if you take out the expansion fund money, we're just short of the reserve target for water. On the wastewater side, we currently have about 200,000 in cash when we should have a target of about 1 million. So when we go forward with the study, I'll demonstrate the various reserve in total and how that affects the rate study. So let's talk about the water financial plan. This represents the capital improvement plan spending going forward for the next 10 years for the city. There's a lot of projects being constructed in the first 5 years that are shown here. Those improvements are going to be met with impact fee money, that's expansion money, and then also with the capital reserve money that's on hand right now. So the first 2 years are significant money being spent out of cash reserves from expansion and capital. Then going forward, we're going to build into the rates an amount that's going to be transferred to capital to pay for replacement. So as replacements are an annual thing going forward, we want the rates to be able to contribute an amount to pay for that. So now this represents our financial plan going forward for the water system. We're proposing that revenue be increased by 4.5% per year as we go forward to meet the operating expenses and capital requirements of the water system. So the blue column represents our operation and maintenance expense. The yellow represents current debt service that we're being paid, and this represents the replacement amount that I talked about in the last slide. So we're going to make that part of the contribution going forward in the expenses. Now, at the end here, you see that this black line represents if we didn't raise rates, and then by raising the revenue by 4.5%, we're above the columns these last 2 years. So what that means is we're putting money back into cash for the fund. So currently, the purple line represents how much cash we expect to accumulate during the 5 years, and eventually we hit our target when we go out here. We're not quite there yet, but in 10 years you'll be hitting that target. So this is what the cash reserves will look like. I'm sorry. This is the revenue that would be received if you raise the rates by 4.5%. I'm sorry?
Each year?
Yes, each year. So the revenue, we need 4.5% more revenue coming in each year as we move forward.
Okay.
So when we implement that plan, as I mentioned last slide, we're contributing to the operating cash reserve. So each year, the operating blue column goes up, and we already have enough in our capital to maintain that reserve. So by the time we get out here the 10th year or so, we start to hit our target that we've set up. So essentially, that's the plan moving forward to increase the cash reserve, previously what they were probably about 10 years ago before the recession. Okay, so once we've identified our financial plan, we need to set our water rates to generate those revenue targets that I mentioned. Now, setting water rates requires us to meet Proposition 218, and that's a legislative item where they found that water rates and sewer rates are a property-related fee, and we have to comply with the requirements then of Proposition 218. The substantive requirements are that we set revenues must not exceed the cost of providing the service, that the revenue can only be used for the purpose which the fee was imposed, and the amount of fee must not exceed the proportional cost of service attributable to that parcel. So not only do we need to do that, but there have been several recent decisions as we progress through this related to Proposition 218. So this particular one represents action to be taken regarding tiered rate structures. So while under this decision, rates still need to be proportional to the cost of service, if we're going to have a tiered rate structure, we have to justify the cost in those tiers, which sets the pricing in that tier. So it can't be arbitrary or it can't be something desirable. We have to justify how we got there. So it doesn't mean we can't have conservation rates. It just means we have to demonstrate how we comply with it. So to do that, we're following the American Water Works Association methodology established for developing fixed and variable charges. In that methodology, we allocate the water expenses and capital costs to various cost components, and we identify what our water supply costs are, what are the costs to deliver water to our customers, what are the peaking costs associated with delivering water, say, in the summertime, costs related to operating and maintaining our service lines, costs related to customer billing, collecting, and metering. So there's a methodology that goes with that to be able to meet the requirements of the legislative agenda requirements. So I don't want to get into too much detail and bog you down with that, but I just want to discuss that there is a methodology that is approved to do this kind of work, and we have documented that, and it's in the rate study report, and it would comply with Prop 218. Now, one changes that we'll be making that's substantive in the report is we're going to change the water variable rate structure. Now, we're going to redefine the rate tiers to comply with the requirements. So, for example, for single-family residential, we're going to identify Tier 1 is equal to indoor water use. And we're going to say that 4 persons per household at 55 gallons per capita per day translates into 1,800 cubic feet bi-monthly. So Tier 1 will be 0 to 1,800 cubic feet bi-monthly. Then part of their legislative requirements, they want us to head towards a water budget rate structure at some time in the future, maybe 5 to 10 years. That's currently being looked at and decided by the State Water Resource Control Board. But the idea is that Tier 2 would capture outdoor water use. So for single-family homes, each one has a different parcel size. There'll be different requirements based on the size of your lot. But we don't have that information yet, and the city will be looking to do that sometime in the future. So we're going to set outdoor water use equal to the summer peak of the single-family class, and that works out to be 1,500 cubic feet. So Tier 2 will be 1,900 cubic feet to 50. And then Tier 3 would just be use over Tier 2. Now for our other customer classes, we're going to set up what's called a uniform rate structure. That's just going to be $1 per 100 cubic feet for how much you use. But we're also going to recognize that each customer class has a different peaking in it. So for example, multifamily and commercial and irrigation would all have different peaking requirements, but irrigation would be probably the most substantial out of that, having a very high peak ratio.
Can you describe multifamily to me? I'm not sure I know what you mean.
This would be like apartments, condominiums, things that have a lot of units per parcel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So to give you an idea of how we're developing that variable rate structure, then this is a graphical example of how we're doing that. So we're going to recover the delivery, peaking, and water supply costs in our variable rate structure. So we've identified those here, which I need to do to demonstrate compliance with our actual cost, how we develop the cost in the tiers. So everyone shares in the delivery cost equally. And our customers have different peaking requirements, so we can see that some pay less and some pay more based on that peak. And then our water supply costs. The city has water supply from replenishment groundwater, and then from imported water. So the cost of those different sources are different. So we assume the least cost is dispatched first, and so we can see that the price changes as we move in the tiers. Now this down here represents a blended of those items for each one of these classes. But the point is, as we move forward, we add delivery costs, peaking, and supply. We get a rate in the tier of $1.60 for Tier 1, $2.30 for Tier 2, and $3.24 for Tier 3. So essentially then this provides how we came up with the costs in the tiers and justifying the rates that are there.
And I guess I'm still hung up on multifamily. I thought that if the 5 of us up here all lived in one apartment complex, but the mayor took long showers, but I mean, aren't the water bills associated within each individual apartment?
No, I believe they're master metered, if I'm correct.
So if the mayor takes long showers and the rest of us are into water conservation, we all pay the penalty for his long showers.
So to speak. We don't look at it on an individual apartment basis for water. It's being charged by the meter size.
Yeah,
that surprises me. It doesn't seem right.
we're the opponents of socialism.
Well, if you'd take shorter showers, then
If you'd stop flushing.
Yes, Councilman Daly, yes, apartment have bigger water meters because to serve the whole apartment complex because they're owned by one owners. So if, yeah, okay.
But there's no incentive for individual renters to conserve water.
Typically, renters pay water, they get water and trash included in the rent, so typically pay for
Yeah.
usage anyway.
But I'm saying I think that's counterproductive to the objective of what we're trying to do here.
Glad you agree. Collectivism is bad.
Well, keep in mind that we have an irrigation class, so landscape uses are separated from multifamily and commercial as well. So, okay. So to give you an idea, this is the proposed rate schedule itself. So we have fixed charges by meter size, and we'll have the rate structure that I just demonstrated in the last page for variable rates. So the shaded blue represents the current rates that are in place now, And you can see that our tiered rate structure applied to all customers previously, and now we've justified it for single family and then uniform volume rates for everybody else. But I wanted to show this because this would be the table that would probably be included in the Prop 218 notice.
So for example, for the residential, which is 3/4 inch, right now you pay about $30.26 every 2 months. So you pay about $15 a month.
So
I had a question.
To give you a better idea of that,
And then we'll increase to $32.84.
I had a question about the prior table. Jarb, one of the things that we need to do in this room is have directional mics, so when someone talks, they don't look around, try to figure out who's talking. But anyway, just out of curiosity, if you happen to know, I mean, Jarb answered the question briefly by saying that 3/4 is what most residential meters are.
that's correct.
As a breakdown in the whole city, what percentage would you attribute 3/4, and then as you work your way down, or up, I should say? You don't have to give me the exact figures, just in general, you know, is it 70% 3/4 and 30% the rest, or I don't know?
If you give me just a second, we'll try to identify that. So, yeah, I'd say it's probably 60 to 70% of 3/4 inch meter, that's right. 60 to 70%.
60,
probably,
okay,
yeah.
all right. And then if I'm reading your table correctly, it appears as if some of the folks with the bigger meter size actually get a reduction. Am I misreading it?
In the middle of the meter sizes, that's correct, but in the 8 to 10 inch range, they're going to be increasing.
Correct.
Yeah.
So for some people, it's actually going to go up, and for some people, it's actually going to go
Yeah.
down. Okay, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
when you have a rate structure change, things are going to be a little bit volatile the first year,
Okay.
and then it settles down.
You're going to say something, Jarb?
Yes. If you look at one of the items tonight, it's to replace the water meters.
Uh-huh.
And we have, for example, we have 195 of 2-inch water meters, 13 of 3-inch water meters, and so we have, like for a 10-inch, we only have 2,
Okay.
and that was for the VA hospital.
I was going to say, those are the biggest institutions that would have the bigger ones. But the people who are probably going to be most impacted by this would be the
Residential.
residents.
Yeah.
And it appears, if I'm reading it correctly, it's going to go up about $2 of every 2 months for the first year. After that, it's going to go up another $2 or so, or less than $2. After that, it's going to go up, looks like $1.50, and then after that, it's going to go up $2 or so.
Yeah, I can show you the bills, an example for single
Okay.
family right here. So as you mentioned, we're going to go from 3026 to 3284. The average consumption is 37 for a single family home. So just to give you an idea, the current bill under the current rates is 9640. That'll go to 105.34, and that's almost a $9 increase, or 9.3%. Now I realize these are greater than the 4.5% of the revenue we're going to receive, but it has to do with the rate structure change. So where previously single-family benefited from that rate structure, and now we have to comply with the new requirements. So because of that, you're seeing this change. But going forward, after the first year, it'll be 4.5% increase. To see how you compare with others, you might be more pleased with this. Even with the revenue increase and the rate increases that I presented, the bill will increase by that $9 I mentioned, but you're still in the lower half, if not the second to lowest of the bills we surveyed at 3,700 cubic feet by month.
So this is incorporating the proposed increases.
This is, yes. So here's the current bill, and then here's what the increase.
Okay.
So, yeah. So looking at this chart, you would say then that the bills are reasonable for the city of Loma Linda. Okay, that's the water system. I'll then do the wastewater system. It's very similar in how we present it. This is the wastewater capital plan. It's about $300,000 a year being spent the first 5 years, except for the first year. But the money will come from capital reserves and then the replacement transfer, which we build in just like we did for water. So
Let me add, the reason we don't have any capital improvement project for this year, because we don't have the money. So, and for the second, and third, and fourth year, I just leave it there, so just in case the money come in, we can start spending on the pipeline replacement and so forth.
Now, previously, we had a very slow rate increase built in to our rates, correct? That we passed a couple of years ago?
Right, and that's what happened is we didn't increase fast enough, so we end up spending more money than.
So you discovered the rates we did, which was a really slow increase,
Yes.
was inadequate to
Correct.
meet the expense.
Correct.
for our wastewater financial plan, we're also proposing to increase revenue by 4.5% each year going forward. The majority of the expenses associated with wastewater is the San Bernardino treatment expense. The city collects the money for the city of San Bernardino through their charges and then remits that to the city of San Bernardino. So the actual costs to the district are really O&M, the little replacement amount that we're talking about here, and then some debt service that's currently being paid back. But essentially, 4.5% will meet our targets as we move forward. Now, as in the water system, we have to develop rates that will generate that revenue. So, but let me first talk about the wastewater reserves. So as we talked the last time I did this study, we mentioned that we're drawing down the reserves and that eventually we would be going forward. And so we're still proposing that kind of a recovery. So the money that we have is really capital, and then the operating eventually does build up once we continue forward. So we're only adopting rates for the first 5 years. And then after that, we'll do a new rate study right about here and see where we're at and be going forward from that.
So can you be specific on the proposal? We're recommending 4.5% increase per year for how many years?
5 years.
5 years.
And then after 5 years, we have to come back and do a study. Hopefully by that time, based on this table, we already should meet our what we like the money to have.
Well, if you and the mayor would stop taking long, hot showers, maybe we could make a dent in this. Well,
The
if you did
heat-
them together, that would work.
The heat part is global warming concern. I'm sure that keeps you up at night. My question is, let's say we're populists and we go, you're not getting any increases out of our people. We're going to stand up for our residents and we're going to deny you these rate increases. What would happen to us if we went underwater on the wastewater reserve fund?
Well, right now we have a couple of pipelines that need a repair or replacement that I need to come back to you at mid-year to replace that pipeline. If we don't have the money, we have to borrow from the water fund or borrow from somewhere to be able to fix that. And we did that in the past. We have to borrow money from the water fund and until we have the money come from reserve, and then we pay back the water fund.
So I've always heard over the years that we're not allowed to mix funds and all these things. Can we rescue the water fund with the general fund?
I prefer not to, because
But can we?
you can borrow with the paperwork, guarantee that you will pay it back, yes.
But only if we pay it back.
Correct.
I'm not advising it. What I'm doing is I'm trying to bracket our possibilities here. Well, that's my question.
Deanne is holding her chest right now.
Yeah, I know, but I'm only doing it to be a rabble rouser. But because you always hear about citizens rising up against their local government because they raise the water rates or the sewer rates or the trash rates too much. And when they do that, what I want to know is what is the consequence of doing that kind of populist revolt against tax increases.
And for example, I use a water fund example. The reason will be able to replace the pipeline within this past 5 years is because we have the money to be able to replace this pipeline. And the way I'm doing it is that instead of just replacing the pipeline, the same size, I increase the pipeline from 4 to 8 or from 6 to 8, so that in addition using the operating fund, I use the development impact fee because I increase the capacity to the pipeline. So if you notice that we have money in reserve for the development impact fee, I was be able to use that money because we increased the capacity at the same time.
Yeah, and this is the fund where we got a very large award from the courts for the theft of our redevelopment agency funds, right? So
what's
The water acquisition fund, not the wastewater.
okay, but the water acquisition
But the
fund-
water acquisition fund is the one that we use for expanding the size of pipes.
Correct.
The water lines, but not the sewer lines.
No,
So it doesn't work for the sewer lines.
But,
Okay.
so when you talked earlier about you wanted to do some capital improvements, but there was no money for it, were you referring just to the wastewater?
Correct. Right now
Okay.
is sewer,
Because
yes.
the water fund, we're doing well with the reserves.
Not quite. We would like to have more. If you look at, go back to,
Well, but if I remember correctly, we have we're swimming in money in that. We said
No.
no problem spending $1 million on that because we have plenty of money.
okay, if you look at it, the money, we have a lot of money, it comes from the development impact fee,
No,
water acquisition fund.
okay, so help me understand something. When the light rail from Redlands went through our area and we had to spend $1 million or so to do, what fund did that money come from?
Development impact fee, because I increased the pipe size.
Okay, I understand that part. So you did not use water fund for changing that pipe?
I use the development impact fee.
Which is different than the water
Operating.
acquisition fund?
Correct.
Okay. And what is the balance of the water acquisition fund?
What is what?
What's the balance of the water acquisition fund?
It would be on, right here, the current $4.5 million as of June
And there's
30.
money coming into it every year because we're getting excess revenues from the RDA, right? So that fund is actually growing.
Well, now that they've caught up on the arrears payment, now it's only about coming in annually, there's about, I want to say 400,000 that will come in for, I want to say, it will probably be another, trying to think of the years, maybe less than 10 years, maybe 9 years now, that will continue to come in. Yes. It all depends on what projects JAR has for the water fund.
For the operating fund, you have 1.2 million available as of June 30.
We do. We have water department, we have money budgeted. I think it was 6.5 million.
I mean, total expenditures?
Yes.
Yeah, it's about that,
Yes,
yes.
6.5 million.
That's not the question I have,
My best knowledge is that we don't budget water acquisition expansion funds. We use them because we innovatively, rather than replacing a 4-inch line with a 4-inch line, we replace a 4 with a 6, and then we can dip into a fund where we have more reserves than the other one where we don't. So it's a way to expand capacity and balance the fund reserves so that we can actually use the money, because you can't use it to just replace. So if you do increase your capacity, then you can use this fund where we have this relative windfall because we got the money back from the state under the RDA lawsuit. So But it's not, it's more just how much can he expand, you know, what are we going to replace? How much is it going to cost? And it's year by year. It's, well, let me just give you an idea. The water pipe to my street has broken for the 79th time, and it's leaking all over the street, and there's a hole in the street again. So the town has a lot of aluminum foil thickness pipe, and you can't really stall it anymore. I am very much in favor of doing whatever it takes to keep our
And in addition to
water
that,
system going.
Mr. Milford will get to know it as well, is the city have to work with San Juan Valley Municipal Water District to purchase the water from Northern California. So we are one of the city that work with Municipal Water District to, not just us, all the water agency to purchase the water from Northern California and put it in the Bunker Hill Basin. So for us, it's about $260,000 a year.
Because, and we can use the water acquisition funds for that.
No.
No.
It's only infrastructure that pays for
The
it?
water
Not
acquisition.
actual water?
Yeah, the water acquisition fund is developer impact fees. So it could only be used for expansion of the system. It is collected when developers come in and they pay their fees. When we do the annual every 5 years, we update the development impact fee study. We go through a facilities assessment, basically, on what the capacity of the city will be at full growth. And everybody, new development has to buy their share into the system. So even when JARB does a water line expansion, only a percentage of the pipeline can be paid with expansion money. Water operation has to pay for the existing system that was already in place.
Okay, so is that, are you done with your presentation?
I got a few more slides.
Okay, go
And then we
ahead.
get to, I'll be as quick as I can. So we just discussed the wastewater reserves. So as I mentioned, we continue to draw down the reserves until we're able to build those back up. We'll do a rate study right here to figure out what we're going to do going forward the last 5 years. Similar to water, we have to do up our wastewater rates based on cost of service. So we're going to follow the Water Environment Federation. It's an industry trade methodology. It's the current method that's being used right now for the city, so we're just essentially updating that methodology going forward. So let's take a look what the charges turn out to be. For single family, the current rate is, the charge is $31.24 per buy month. That will increase to $32.24 per buy month. That's a $1 increase, which is 3.2%. For our other customers, essentially commercial, they'll fall into one of these 6 categories down here. They'll pay a fixed charge of $17.18 per buy month, but then they'll also have a volume charge based on how much water they consume. So this is the same methodology as before. And every time we update these studies every 5 years, you can see the numbers, they switch around. This pays more, this one pays more, and then these pay less here. So it's just kind of the way cost of service shakes out when you do these studies. So one more thing, they demonstrate the bills. So for wastewater, even with the increase, you are about the same place you were previously, just a little bit above the mid-range going forward. So even at the increase, the wastewater rates are still reasonable, I believe. Just to discuss next steps, I presented the report this evening. Staff would like to request the acceptance of the study and move forward to Prop 218 notices. That initiates this 45-day waiting period required of Proposition 218. We would then have a public hearing scheduled for late January, and then the rates would become effective March 1st. So that does include my presentation.
Okay, my question is, have we built into this any kind of allowance for flexibility when the state comes back with a mandatory rationing
Yes.
regime? Does this allow us to punish anybody for overutilization?
We did, right, for the water conservation, the 20% by 2020.
I'm not recalling that.
Because that part of the conversation is
Oh.
the water, we're going to be losing.
Let's talk about meeting the conservation targets. Yes, yeah, that's correct. I think what you're referring to is if you have to cut back, what happens? It's a similar situation. We're trying to keep the cash reserves high enough such that when you do have to conserve back, you've got that cushion. And that's what was there before, and that's what they'll be using going forward.
Yeah, so when they actually conserve, we get less revenue, and we have to have the cushion to soak up the losses during that time. But it sounds like that court case that doesn't allow you to do any utilization tiering, aggressive tiering, has really limited our ability to punish anybody for overutilization.
Under that kind of discussion, I'm going to have to refer to a legal person. That's the rates I present. I comply with Proposition 218, which is the requirements and for setting rates.
Yeah. Yeah, my understanding is that if you put in punitive rates for the high-end users, you run afoul of a court case. So, yeah, I'm getting nods. So, yeah, so I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yes, I would just say that he's correct. We have to follow Prop 218 unless and until there's some change in the law.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the pleasure of the council?
Okay, quick question. I support what we're doing here, but when we say, my question has to do with how the citizens of Loma Linda are going to be notified of this and what kind of rationale they'll. And when I see Proposition 218 notices sent to owners by December 1st, I don't have any confidence in that at all. I don't read that stuff. And so that we need, as a city, to have some kind of understandable, concise explanation of what's happening here in order for my support on this. Otherwise, it's just going to be another tax increase, and I'm going to hear about it.
We do send a letter out to every homeowners and a tenant.
With the water bill? Or
No,
separately?
it's a separate.
Yeah, because
It's
the
a
water
separate
bill is a
bill.
card that comes
Right,
out.
right, this is separate.
Yeah, there's requirements that you have to follow with Proposition 218 that says how to do this process. And that is to present a notice that's going to be mailed to all the owners or of the,
No,
that would be paying.
and I understand that. It's how the notice is worded. Is it understandable and concise? That's my concern. Because I get propositions just like everybody else does, and half of them aren't understandable.
Is the wording mandated by Prop 218?
It's not specific wording, I don't believe it's mandated, but we have to present the actual rates they'll be charged, has to be in that notice.
Sure, yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense,
yeah.
of course.
So-
So does the city have authority to draft our own wording, our own interpretation of this?
We already did that, but yes, you're welcome to come over, take a look at it.
Yeah,
It's
I'd like
already.
to. I'd like to.
And being
I'm a
English
good-
is a
I'm
second
good-
language, I try to make it simple that I can understand.
No, I'm a good guinea pig on that.
My neighbor came every time we do a rent increase.
So if we have, as we choose to, input on the wording, then I'm supportive and I would move, I would make the motion to approve.
There's a motion.
Yeah, this is to hear it from the consultant, what the rates would be in place, and then next to direct staff to do the Prop 218 notices.
I like to make motions.
So there's a second to direct staff to follow through with the plan.
And I just wanted to make one
Well, we can-
comment on the notice, that because we do have a lot of transient population in the city with students and stuff, we go above and beyond. We go above and beyond just notifying the owners. We actually send one to the property address as well.
As long as it's understood.
There,
Christmas present.
The transient wastewater goes into the water table directly.
No, transients use our water fountain out here, so.
Okay, so have you received adequate incentive to do it? Okay. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, reports of councilmen.
I was going to just general comment. I noticed on California, and I know we did the intersection, which is great. It's beautiful. Everything runs very smoothly. However, and this is more of a statement. I don't know if we ever have a solution for this, but back in the day when Desi and I actually opposed them redoing that school there, one of the concerns we had was the traffic that it would cause in California. Well, I've had the misfortune of driving down California when school gets out at Mission, and it's becoming a pretty significant issue. We have a beautiful $4 million intersection that sits empty because it doesn't help, not that it would, it doesn't address the issue of the people going in and out of school. So I don't know if there's any solution to it or something the city can do to try to speed that process up there.
So I just happened to have a meeting with the principal there about a week ago.
About this?
No, on an unrelated matter, but she brought this up to me, and she said that she attends our traffic committee meetings. And she actually suggested something that I thought was a pretty smart thing. She said that what's contributing to the problem are parents making left turns. And so her suggestion was that we put up the plastic delineators down the center of the street, and so they wouldn't turn into the center, into the delineators. They'd make right turns. So I don't know if she conveyed that to you.
Yes, she did. And what happened, we look into that, the problem is people don't see those delineators, and they hit the darn thing because it's sit right in the middle. And even further south on California North of Barton Road, we have that for a long time, and we keep having to go replace them. So what we are proposing is putting that big button, just like they did at the
I don't think that'll stop it. I think
at the parking structure right here on the south side Barton Road.
The bubbles
yellow
on the street.
Dome.
They're just plastic.
And then it just make it so that it directed the traffic to turn right, make sure that they turn right.
Well, I mean, we can take it a step further and say, put in an ordinance, you can't make a left turn during these hours.
It's already forbidden. So
It's already have a sign that says no left
Then we
turn.
need to have a police officer there and start writing tickets.
Well, the problem is it's hard to do that. But the reality is that she pointed that out to me, that it already says no left turn there.
Yes.
And and she said the parents are violating it. I think the delineators is probably the only way, because people don't realize you can drive over them. They think they're fixed.
Just as that area gets developed, remind me, is there a way for people to, there probably isn't, exit that area without coming into California? In other words, is there another way to go around? No. Yeah, but anyway, it's becoming it sounds like you guys are aware of it. It's becoming a big issue.
Yes.
Traffic gets backed up all the way to Park Street and beyond, and it's an issue. So we just need to figure out. And speaking of traffic committee, real quick, I know that we assigned some people who wanted to sit on it. Have we actually voted for the assignment of those people, or did we just make an ad hoc decision that you're on it and that was it? Is there some sort of formal?
Yeah, you did select
It was voted.
Yeah, but I thought, because I know someone else applied and he hasn't heard back from the city about being appointed.
No vacancy because we filled it.
But that's not the only committee.
No, there were two. No,
We have two additional vacancies on the Traffic Advisory Committee. I just last week received a second application, so I can put those, I have two applications.
Okay, so they're coming.
I can put those on the agenda for December.
But there's a gentleman that came here, complained about traffic, and we all agreed that he could sit on traffic committee and he had to go.
The one that had 100 tickets?
No, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave my business card, but he never contacted me.
No. He applied because I run into him often, and he says he hasn't heard back from the city. So my question is, I thought we were coming back with a formal approval of the people that were going to be on the traffic committee. I guess
She'll bring it back in December.
Like I said, I just got last week, the second application. So I just have the two applications for the Traffic Advisory Committee. And that needs to come back to the council for
And how
appointment.
many positions were open left?
On the Traffic Advisory Committee, 2.
That would be.
In
that would
addition
fill
to
them.
Milford's?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so it looks like it's just a matter of agendizing it and put it on the next agenda.
And the 2 applications that I talked to both of the people, and I told them that right now we're taking the applications, and they'll be notified once it's agendized.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And one thing, I'm sorry, is they have to show up. We emailed them, we called them to ask them to show up for the meeting. At last meeting, we didn't have a quorum, but we met anyway, so.
It sounds to me like you haven't even replaced the ones that left. Because there hasn't been a formal.
Even the one that's already on, we have a hard time asking to come to the meeting. So.
Yeah. Well, this gentleman keeps bugging me saying, I haven't heard back from the city, I'm ready to serve, what's happening? So I'm asking for clarification.
Okay, for people who don't show, I think we should do the usual thing of culling the list, you know, and giving them a right to cure, and if they don't want to come, then we replace them with someone more interested. So we'll just run by the standard process. You have a report?
Just to follow up, I think Councilman Popescu raises an issue that portends for trouble in the future too, and we've discussed it already, but this middle school that's going to be in the heart of the Area D development, I continue to be very concerned about the traffic flow with the ingress and egress of that school. I just don't see how that's going to work. So I hope that the traffic committee takes this up and looks at it very carefully, because I see that as a real potential problem.
The good news is the state has no intention of providing new school funds for the foreseeable future. So it's probably a couple decades off.
So we don't have to worry about it.
I might.
That's not what I heard Marshall Tuck's going to do. Hey, you know what I noticed on California, since we're talking about California? A bunch of semi-trucks are now parking in front of the Kukas right there. Yeah, I mean, that's become a parking lot.
We
now
have an ordinance, right? Has it gone into effect?
Yes.
But it has to be posted, and that's not posted there.
Okay.
And they're still on Redlands Boulevard.
Yeah.
I don't see them over Industrial, but I see them on Redlands Boulevard on California.
Okay, I have 2 reports. Just to let you know, there are people who come here for various conventions and things, and 2 days ago I emceed a 5-hour conference at Linda Valley Villa of retirees of the Southeastern California Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. So those of you who aspire to become mayor, think of what you have in store. An update on Confire. I sit on the board of Confire, and I currently serve as the chair. And the county, which represents roughly 55% of the call volume for Confire, has elected to send out requests for proposal for a reassessment of their involvement with Confire, and they seem to have every intention of leaving Confire, but it would require them to get permission from the County Board of Supervisors to do so, and so the whole thing is a bit up in the air. Just to let you know, Confire is proceeding apace and will deal with their departure should it ever come to fruition. There's considerable amount of consternation over the threats of departure, because a preliminary estimate is that it would increase the cost of all the cities involved by a significant number, because there would be less economy of scale than there is by having them included.
That's a management.
Repeat that question.
What has stimulated this issue?
It's probably it's a speculative thing, but it has different flavors, and some of it is because they feel that their representation on the governing body is inadequate to so they only have 1 vote out of 6 currently on the board, and they have 55% of the volume, So they feel like they're underrepresented. They feel like it's taxation without representation. It also has some aspects of
There's the Victorville decision, too, that precipitated.
Say that.
The Victorville decision that we made.
Yes, Victorville elected to drop out of the contract with County Fire, and in the process, County Fire believes that they have abrogated their responsibility to pay for the accumulated unfunded liabilities for the retirement of the county firemen who served at Victorville for all those years. And their strategy to deal with that was to deny Victorville as a new independent fire agency any services from Confire. The board of Confire does not agree with them, and the group of fire chiefs that serve as part of the governance structure of Confire also does not agree with them, and they're upset about that, and they feel that their needs are not being answered, and they need to address that by investigating independence. Correct? Is that fairly accurate? And we believe that their overtures to depart will be rebuffed by their governing body, but we're not absolutely certain. So, but their behavior is becoming, let's just say, not consonant with a congenial approach to shared governance. I don't know how else to euphemize it. Yeah. So that's my report. Any other reports? Any reports of officers?
Really quickly. A couple weeks ago, we had the Healthy Cities group here, and we kind of lose track of all the things that we're doing. And as the mayor was saying, with the congeniality, we're working with the Loma Linda University Health on creating a wayfinding system throughout the city. And one of these components is they're trying to get people to use the parking structure at FMO and actually walk down the street to the other buildings down the street. So we're working with Loma University Health to put kind of these signs at different places down Barton Road next to the sidewalk to kind of give a direction pathway and have healthy motivational type signage to encourage, first to show directions, and secondly to provide some type of encouragement along that use.
So you're talking about the new structure in front of the FMO?
That's correct.
And they would walk to what facilities? Where's the signage?
Anything down Barton Road all the way down to
all in Loma Linda Drive? That's a heck of a walk.
About a half mile. But to East Campus.
But the motivational posters will get you there.
Yeah. But the idea is that at least we're trying to move some people around, and that there is something to encourage some healthy activity, so that we do want to show that there is some, there's cooperation, and that we are looking at these type of things to encourage healthy activity throughout the city.
And is it just me, or is there increased parking in the city, the South City lot, since we shut down the dirt parking lot?
If there is, it's not causing a huge impact.
Oh, okay. It just seems when I come in here, it's really crowded now.
Well, Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, they are parking farther up Loma Linda Drive.
Too. Yeah.
But
so not everybody is motivated to take the half a mile hike.
They're not working on the Lewis property anymore?
On
No.
Stewart property? No,
Stewart property?
we've closed that down. Yeah. Water quality issues, you're not allowed to park on dirt because of dust and then oil leakage and water contamination. Anyway, just wanted to share that, what's coming up, and then you'll be seeing here in the next couple of weeks some of the major wayfinding activities that are going on. Thank you.
Did you choose the posters?
No. Actually, these are Lewis posters.
We, just on that topic, there was some consternation at the university that they had lost these parking spots and thought it was capricious action by the city, and I let them know that it was all Milford's fault.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Because it had to do with water and groundwater
Perfect.
issues.
Thank you.
So it's nice to have a fall guy.
I think all of them, a lot of them have some type of, activity feel, except I don't get the hands one.
I don't understand the signs.
Yeah.
How is this taking you to where you're ultimately trying to get?
Well, the hope, hold on, pain ends, I think that one's appropriate.
I wasn't sure if that was promoting evolution or not.
But I don't understand, if I park in the new structure in front of the FMO, and I've got an appointment up here on Loma Linda Drive at one of these facilities, how does this get me there?
It's
Since the dirt lot,
I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just not the brightest bulb in the chandelier tonight.
Good evening, everybody. I'll explain a little bit further. So most of the people that were parking over at East Campus, such as staff, are going to be parking over more likely in Lot J. And that's actually where it's going to start, which is right next to the FMO. And part of what we're trying to do is promote wellness with wellness themes. So staff members know that they're going to walk to work from there, and along the way we want to encourage wellness with positive themes.
I see.
So
it's not helping them find the location they're trying to.
No, it's not the location, but it's more or less just to have some inspiration. So on the way to work, it's more the first image as you're going towards East Campus is to have something that promotes a little bit more physical activity, where messages on the back side of the signs coming back will have something that's more encouraging and more peaceful message as you're heading back to your car to go home. And the thought is that we would try to promote wellness and work with the city in trying to promote these signs in different locations.
I see. Okay.
So eventually as we...
So it's not wayfinding, it's inspirational signs.
Yeah, and it kind of goes with the arrival signs that we're putting up, where we're putting public art on the back. It all promotes wellness. In those cases, those are a little bit more strategically thought out, in that we have more specific themes per location because we want it to orientate people to where they're at. Kind of like over on Stewart Street, you're right, kind of going into the heart of the campus. So some of the themes there may be learning, where we may have something that's a little bit more orientated towards different type of health promotion as you're up towards the med center.
Okay.
And so I'm hoping that we will continue putting these as we find different walking pathways. For example, we might decide to put something over at Shepherdson's Lot going towards Drayson Center, where you may get people going to event parking. So it might be another opportunity. But we also tried to provide images that might be beneficial to the public. Since the public will be walking the streets, we also wanted to try to put something up that wasn't too specific to our staff, but also something that the public could enjoy.
As long as it inspires Councilman Lenart when he hikes to the medical center from the Shepherdson lot.
I get to work so early, I can park right next to the building.
Yeah, well, so you don't need a sign. Okay, I understand.
Okay, and just to give you an update, we have engineering just about wrapped up, and we're going to be submitting the first phase of arrival signs to the city in January. We'll probably start construction sometime in February, and we should have the project, the first phase, built out by sometime in June. So the project that we've brought to City Council several times and got approved last year is actually in motion. Budget's been approved. Contracts have been awarded, engineering's wrapping up, and you'll soon see some physical structures going up.
Okay, the other question I have is, I know that technology's involved, but some signs fade out sometimes quickly, sometimes over a period of time. Others are permanent. Have you looked at the technology in terms of, because if we have a bunch of faded out signs, that's not going to be very inspirational either.
Well, we're using a pretty high quality product, so there should be some longevity, and part of the agreement that we have with the city is that we'll maintain the signs.
Okay.
So there'll be maintenance factored in. So as I go into each year and I start building signs, We'll also be going back and maybe changing out some of the public art. And as you go 5, 6, 10 years down the road, we're going to have a maintenance plan built into our budgets where we go back and do some updating. And we have built some other type of technology into the signs. Some of the over-the-road signs do have a 17-inch by 25-foot LED at the bottom. And those have about a lifespan of about 15 years.
Okay.
So over time, as we build out the infrastructure, we'll be spending less money on building new projects and more money maintaining them over time.
No, I appreciate that you're looking at that. If you walk on the walkway in front of Prince Hall School of Dentistry, we've got some historical signs in the front. And we looked very carefully at the technology for that, and those signs are never supposed to fade out because we didn't want to replace them and so forth.
They're metallic.
What's that?
They have metallic.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it is now, but they were not cheap, but they really lasted and they're high quality. So I'm just sharing that you already have some signs on campus that shouldn't have the problem that I'm concerned about. I appreciate your pledge to maintain them. I don't want to sound cynical, but we've heard that pledge from the university or the medical center on some of the facilities and landscaping too that haven't quite panned out. Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on it.
Okay. And we do have an agreement that we're signing with the city that will have certain terms about maintaining the signs.
Good.
And I'm not going anywhere soon.
Okay.
So hopefully as time goes on, and as I say, as we're kind of at the end of building out several projects, we should be focusing back more on the maintenance of the signs as time goes on, because they're going to be attractive signs, but they also need to be maintained in order to keep a good appearance.
And just out of curiosity, when I'm walking, what's the size of these signs, out of curiosity?
The signs here?
Yeah.
They're roughly, they're under 6, if you go back to the, oops.
They're about the size of a re-elect Councilman Daley sign.
They're 18 inches tall by 2 foot wide. So we didn't want them to be too, just enough as you're walking up. They're very visible. You can read them, but we didn't want something that was, too large and dominating the sidewalk, but just something that kind of blended in, but at the same time people could notice.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering, are these the final galley proofs for these signs, because they've got typos and usage errors in them?
Grammatical errors.
Yeah. Marker 2, side A. Is that what you wanted to say? This a wonderful day. Marker 6, side B. From with space in.
Nothing can dim the light that shines from within.
It's missing the marker 2, side A is missing the verb.
Oh, I will go back and make sure.
Marker 6, side B has separated the word within into 2 words.
Yeah, I'll make sure we go back and do a final edit on it. Okay. I thought we had it right. Maybe something got didn't translate over when we sent the sign vendor the proofs. So
yeah, I just hope it doesn't go in like this.
No,
because I'm gonna feel the urge to pull the sign out of the ground if I find it.
Okay, maybe I should send you the final proof, Dan.
Yes, I am a copy editor.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Boy, it's a good thing we didn't have much of an agenda. Okay, another thing, sad moment in our adjournment. We're adjourning in honor and memory of Robert Chrisman, our 6th mayor. It states incorrectly that he served as a councilman from 1998 to 2008. It was actually 1988 to 2008. And he was mayor for 6 years during that time, and he passed away last month. Some of us attended his memorial service, which was somber but uplifting, and it was a nice presentation. So we're adjourning in honor of him. And next items on the schedule are the two other boards that meet. And we'll start with our Housing Authority. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Any reports from the public? Comments not on the agenda?
At some point, I'll have a comment on that, but go ahead.
Okay, seeing none. How about the consent calendar?
I'll move.
There's a motion. Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Any opposition? Hearing none. It's approved unanimously. Now, member reports.
Just quick, I happened to run into a resident the other day, and she informed me, and I don't know if you guys are aware of, but the management company of our affordable housing that's unpopular has changed in the last 2 months. The management company that manages the affordable housing complex. Obviously, that's something that's important to us because a lot of how those things are managed has to do with who's doing it and how they're doing it, and that applies to the senior center where your father was.
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware of that. You may want to have staff just introduce yourself and get to know them and what they're doing. And
So did Charlie Brumbaugh sell it, or did he manage it, contract it out to someone else to manage?
Corporation for Better Housing still owns it.
Okay, so it's just a management company that changed. So anyway, just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Okay, any other reports of councilmen? Any reports of staff? Hearing none, then we'll go to, that adjourns that meeting. We'll go to the successor agency. Any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Any reports from the public on any non-agendized items? No takers. Consent calendar. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Any opposition? Hearing none. It's approved unanimously. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we are back in closed session on the city council agenda.
Okay. So the city council is not yet adjourned, but we still did it in memory of Robert Christman.
Yes.